One thing I ask the guys, with everything this team accomplished last year, and you got a really good core coming back, how do you guard against complacency?
You know what? I think the biggest thing for our guys, everybody always talks about, and they use kind of the slogan like unfinished business. And so the one thing that we try to do coming in the summer is we never really talk about, anything being unfinished. We always talk about, each one of our guys, each one of our staff members, we have a plan for our life. We have a plan for what we want to do and where we're trying to go. And so, it's a journey. And for us, it's just another part of the journey. You go to practice, you talk about being 1% better every day. We talk about making sure that we can execute in the tough moments. And for our guys, if we stay laser focused on those things, everything will play out the way it's supposed to. And just being able to hold them accountable in every aspect of their life, I think that's how you guard against complacency.
Was the offseason and practice so far in any way smoother because, last year you had to take that time to establish a certain culture and expectations? Was it any smoother this year because you got so many guys that played on the team last year, and you got one of the transfers, Omar? I'm sure you have a relationship with Omar at Florida. So was it any easier or smoother this year?
You know what? In certain aspects, it was a little smoother, but for the most part, you still have guys, whether they're returning or they're new guys. Everybody has, their certain piece that they want to put into the team and into the environment. And for us, being able to, tell everybody, look, you may have a bigger role this year, but at the same time, it's we over me. And we got to continue just to push the culture piece to make sure everybody knows it's win by committee. It's not one individual guy. This team is Jacksonville University. It's not Kevion Nolan. It's not Osao Sifo. It's not Omar Payne. It's none of those guys. It's a team. And so, in some aspects, guys show up and they're team first, but just being honest and transparent, some days they're me first. And so just trying to have more we first days than necessarily me first.
You throw Omar into the mix as far as the big man rotation. How does, I don't know, you can't have too many of those guys, can you?
Can't have enough. You know what? Omar's been a blessing for us. He brings size, he brings experience. Obviously, he loves that, he has to come in, he has to compete for a spot. But at the same time, we feel like we have multiple guys who can start at the 4 or 5. And, being able to have that certain level of experience at those two positions allows for us to play with a variety, whether you want to go super big with Mike Marsh and Omar Payne, or, you want to go with a little bit more speed, Omar Payne and Osao Sifo. And so for us, being able to have, different bigs that have different skill sets allows for us to have a competitive advantage.
The things that Tyrese Davis gave you, the things that he did, who do you have that can kind of fill that
role
of, you can plug him in a lot of different situations, he contributed in a lot of different ways. Do you have somebody who you think can plug into that role?
I don't think you can ever really replace a guy like Tyrese Davis. He's very versatile. He's a 6'5", 6'6" wing. And he's a guy who chose to come to JU, and he loved JU. He wore that jersey proudly. But at the same time, I do think that, we have some guys that have come in that will bring us, a different point of view and a different level of playing experience. You got a guy like Jairus Cook, who won at a very high level at North Dakota State. Shoots a 3 ball at a very high rate. And so, he also lost his last game last year in the championship of their conference tournament. And so being able to have a guy with that level of experience, or a guy like Dylan O'Hearn, who is a guy who, he's not necessarily experienced defensively, but on the offensive standpoint, he can explode. And he showed that in one of his games last year where he scored 42 points in a basketball game. And so being able to have those two guys kind of battle it out for that position, I think gives us the ability not necessarily to replace Tyrese, but gives us definitely a competitive advantage on the offensive end.
Are you going to be better on the perimeter?
I believe so. Offensively, I believe so. I think we have multiple guys who could shoot the 3 ball at a very high rate, which last year, it wasn't any hiding. We struggled to shoot the ball at certain times, especially when teams keyed in on Kevion Nolan. And so for us, being able to add, guys who could necessarily stretch the floor this offseason, that's what we tried to address, and I think we did that.
Where is Josiah as far as being in position to help?
So Josiah, he's very young. but at the same time, he's one of our most energetic guys. And so we feel like he may be able to creep in and get some minutes at the 3 position or maybe even at the 4. And so if we go with a small ball lineup, he's the guy who's most comfortable at the 4 position. We can go 4 guards out, and he has a certain level of toughness that he gives us that will allow for him to creep in at that position and play undersized 4-man. Do I think he'll be a guy that we kind of have heavy minutes early on? I don't, but I think he will be able to sneak in anywhere between 10 to 15 minutes a game.
Do you envision a similar role as last year for Giassi in the second half of the season where he gave you a spark off the bench?
I think he'll have a bigger role. He may even be that third guard. He may even start, alongside Jordan Davis and Kevin Nolan. I think, he's very comfortable at playing some backup point guard as well. And so, I expect a bigger role for Giassi this year. I think, he's very comfortable. Last year, he was still trying to make the transition from Division II. But now, being a local guy, having his family here, and then also having a summer underneath his belt, I think he's, ready to jump into a major role.
For the guys that have a knack for just coming in cold, games, they come in cold, you're able to make something happen right away. Is that something that's hard to coach?
It is extremely hard to coach. It is a gift. That's why we look at a guy like Bryce Workman last year. He would come in and he's like a starter. He comes in, he's ready to go. Instantly, he makes an impact, especially on the offensive side of the floor. And so to be able to have guys who can come in and impact your team like that is definitely a gift. And so, we're hoping that, G, he may be a starter, but at the same time, we expect G to show whether he starts or doesn't start. He's that type of guy. He's an everyday guy.
Okay, you're just an old point guard, right?
Yeah.
I know that Ian had told me that he took you aside and said, do whatever you can to keep Kevin out on He's played a lot of college basketball, this guy. Regardless of what you might have up front or things like that, how much comfort does it have knowing that you've got that quarterback in there?
It's a lot of comfort. When you look out there, you always feel like when you got Kevin Nolan on the floor, you have a chance to win games. And, just his level of toughness, the amount of experience he has, and the love that he has for this university, he's going to play his heart out every time, he steps on the floor. And so being able to, have now 2 summers with him, have 1 season on our belt, there's a certain level of trust that he has with me and I have with him. And so, like I said, it's going to be a fun season. I'm just trying to make sure right now he doesn't put too much pressure on himself, and just let the game come to him because I know he wants to have a major year.
He had a certain mentality, and I'm thinking about the UNF game over there.
Mm-hmm.
He had a terrible shooting night.
Yep.
But he made 3 or 4 plays down the stretch that mattered. A steal here, a pass there, and is that the kind of guy he is that if something's not working, he's going to find another way?
It's funny. I was actually talking to Mr. Nolan, Kevin Young's father, last night, and we talked about 45 minutes. And one of the things that he said about his son is an old school player. Whatever he has to do to get the game won, that's what he's going to do. Whether it's rebounding, whether it's getting a steal, like he did versus North Florida, versus Liberty at certain points in times. He's just locked in on trying to win the game. And so, Florida Gulf Coast, I remember, throughout the course of that game, he was really struggling shooting. And I said, look, man, I believe in you. And down the stretch, man, he hit, big 3 after big 3. And obviously he hit the game winner. But Kevin's one of those guys who he doesn't really care what he has to do. He just wants to get the job done. And so it's a luxury, not just for me to coach him, but for, other guys on our team to be able to play alongside him.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room.
Okay.
Duke. First of all, with a program like that, and a few years ago, Coach K started going with the one and done, and so they lost 4 guys. When you play a team like that, and they're going to play I counted maybe 8 or 9 member rotation. Is there enough film on these guys from AAU and high school that you can show the guys a little bit?
So it's not with social media and how it is now, those guys have an opportunity to see these guys play throughout the course of their high school careers. And so coming into college, I know our guys will be well equipped and be able to see, firsthand who they're about to play against. And, whether it's typing their name into the search box on Instagram or wherever it may be, there's film that's going to be readily available. And, like I said, our guys are excited about it, being able to have the opportunity to go play at Duke. I told them about my experience there. We lost 72-79. I believe we were down 1 point at halftime. And then
You played at?
Yep. My sophomore year, we played at Kent State at Duke, and we lost 72-79. And John Shire, he started at the 3 that year as well. So it'll be, like I said, I told him it's going to be an extremely hard game. It's not going to be one of those games where you feel like everything's going to necessarily go your way. It's not. And then also having, a close relationship with Jay Lucas, one of their assistant coaches there now. We talk all the time. And so I know those guys are going to be ready for us. They talk about, how experienced our team is. And so they're definitely going to have their young fellas ready to go.
Now you've got, Omar and Asad have played at Rupp Arena.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then, Omar every big arena in the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
And, Kevin Young's played Espresso. So it's nothing that a lot of your kids haven't experienced before,
That's
that
true.
kind of atmosphere and that kind of, hatred.
That's true.
But you're pretty confident that they may even use that as motivation.
Yeah, our guys, whether it's, the 3 you mentioned or a guy like Jordan Davis, I talk to Jordan Davis about it all the time. He started at Dayton for 2 years, and, notoriously Dayton games are packed, and so being able to have a guy like that who's played in a certain level of high-level games, the crowd doesn't necessarily affect them. And so I think the one thing that we also, we lean on is the experience at Bellarmine last year in the championship game. Being there, playing on the road, trying to win that championship game, it's one of the reference pieces we tell our guys. Stuff's going to be extremely hard. And different situations, like at Bellarmine for the championship game, that's the type of level you want to play at, but at a better level to make sure you want the results you want, obviously, at the end of the game. And so they know going into Duke it's going to be extremely hard. We know they're extremely talented. They're going to be extremely well coached. And we know it's going to be a lot of nerves around that game, obviously with it being one of the most televised games of the year, being Coach K era.
Now, John Trier played for Coach K. He's not likely to change a whole lot of what is working. So that said, when somebody says the words Duke basketball to you, what comes to mind?
I think you think that one of the first words is legendary program, one of the most historically successful programs in the country. Well coached, but not only well coached basketball players, but well coached human beings, people who thrive on and off the court. And so being able to go and play against such a program that has such a strong history in college basketball, like I said, it's an unbelievable experience, not just for our staff, but our players as a whole.
But is there a Duke way of playing basketball that you think that everybody will still see this year? Is it the defending, the inside-out game? They can shoot the 3, they can hurt you. So is there a style of play that you think will not change?
So throughout the course of obviously playing against Duke, but also coaching against Duke and our run-ins at Florida, the one thing that I always remember and I often use with our guys is that there are different styles of play, and Duke, to say the best, I reference Navy SEALs. Navy SEALs don't have a particular fighting scheme or style. They kind of adjust to whatever the environment is, whether it's in water, whether it's on land, or whether it's in air. And so Duke's extremely good at not coaching before or after the game. And when I say that, they're very good at making adjustments throughout the course of the game. They're very good at going at mismatches and understanding who's the weakest defender on the floor. I remember being, in New York City, and we played Jason Tatum, and we had a guy by the name of Kenyon Berry guarding him. And Coach K went to 3 straight ISOs in the middle of the game. He went away from their entire offensive scheme and ran a simple horns action and just isolated Kenyon Berry. And so that slight adjustment ended up getting them a 4 to 6 point separation from us, and it caused us to adjust defensively and play against our terms. And so, like I said, being able to kind of play against them, coach against them, you understand that they're very good at making adjustments throughout the course of the game.
Looking at the A-Sun, do you think it's going to be the same character? Liberty, Bellarmine, I guess Lipscomb's always going to be physically tough. I like, UNF likes to think they're going to be better. So, do you think it's going to be a wide open race initially? I
do. I think the league, the A-Sun, is the best it's ever been. it's so unpredictable. You look at, the preseason rankings last year and you see how everybody finished. You can never go based on preseason predictions. And so one of the things that we're trying to preach to our guys is, you still got to think that you're going to be second to last or pick third to last. And for us, being able to have a chip on our shoulder, we know that anybody, whether it's Queens University who just came into the league or somebody who's like Liberty who's dominated the league throughout the course of the years, anybody can win this year.
Did it get tougher with Austin Peay and Queens?
It definitely got tougher. Austin Peay, Coach James, a guy who was at Duke for a long time, it was his first season last year at Austin Peay, but when you look at his roster, they were extremely talented coming in to the ASUN this year. He had a lot of transfers that came with him, and then Queens, they were extremely successful at the Division II level. Even though, their coach moved on, they still retained, one of the assistant coaches that was there. And they do have, a pretty talented roster as well. And so those two teams will definitely surprise a lot of people. Like I said, I was a new coach last year. The way that we finished, the way that Bellarmine has done traditionally, moving up from D2, anything's possible in this league.
Coach, the rest of the non-conference schedule has had what a challenging one built out this year. What do you see as far as kind of those environments, those teams that we'll be facing off against when you go throughout the remaining of the non-conference?
So one of the biggest challenges that we try to do was to prepare our guys for the ASUN that we just briefly spoke on in the challenges that you'll have. And so going to play at a place like VCU where they're very similar to a Eastern Kentucky playing style, whether in their press, up-tempo style of play, we wanted to make sure that we challenged our guys. Going to play at a place like UAB who, had success. They went to the NCAA tournament last year. They have one of the best guards in the country that is very similar to a guy like Darius McGee at Liberty. And so how do we challenge ourselves in a non-con so that we're fully prepared going into the ASUN? And so you'll see playing at Notre Dame, playing at these different places has allowed for us to get a better feel and to test ourselves early going into ASUN play.
You're not I always thought about it. Your non-conference schedule was, you got Duke and you got Notre Dame and everything, but going on the road, especially Campbell, UAB, Virginia Commonwealth, Wilmington's had some good teams in the past, Louisiana Monroe and everything. So you can kind of get those money games or this really big, but there's a level in there of non-conference games that can really help you.
Yes.
Isn't it? Because some of these teams are pretty doggone good and are hard to play on the road.
Yeah, majority of our teams that we have in the non-conference were tournament teams, and that's what we wanted to schedule teams that we felt were tournament-style teams. And like I said, different playing styles, but at the same time, our bigs, we wanted to challenge them against really good bigs. UAB, they do have a really strong guard, but at the same time, their front line is the SEC front line. Playing against, VCU, who's had an up-tempo style play, and over the last 2 years, they've had, multiple guys get drafted from their team and their program. Being able to go play at a place like Louisiana Monroe that, they've had an influx of transfers come in, and it'll be a road game for us right before, the break, being able to have a certain level of mental fortitude that will allow for our guys to, close out and get a win on the road. UNC Wilmington, who even though, it'll be a payback game for them, they came in here and they didn't perform extremely well, but they ended up finishing the season particularly well in the CAA. And now we're going to be on the road, and it's going to be a payback game for them. And so for our guys, every night they're going to be tested, and that's what you want in a non-con.
And actually, I have one more. Has having the new facility for now a full off-season and a full preseason, can you tell how has that helped you? It's
helped greatly. Being able to, necessarily balance these guys' class schedule. That was one of the biggest, one of the biggest factors. Having that new building has allowed for us to be able to practice at a different time, practice at an earlier time, and not necessarily, dictate these guys' entire day schedule. And so, like I said, it's a blessing. We're glad that our administration poured into our program, not only our program, but the women's program as well. And that new building, that new facility is meant the world to us from a recruiting standpoint and also from a performance standpoint as well.